This is a scooter from a company called Will Mason. It's one of the more interesting things, definitely most unique things I have seen, but probably what is most impressive, we'll start with the good things because there's some less than good things, but the most impressive thing is that this bike has the most horsepower of anything I have in my store right now, even more than the Rivet Anthem or Rivet Outset with 19,500 watts. Yes, this has more horsepower than that. They are saying that this scooter, yes, a sit-down scooter, goes 85 miles an hour and has 21,000 watts of power. Now, I don't know how much torque it has, but if it's anywhere close to 21,000 watts, then yes, it should definitely do 85 miles an hour. And that's really fast, a lot of power. There's a lot of other things I gotta say about this scooter, but let's start with the power and see if it's anywhere close to that. You're gonna do it. Every time. You dropping the wrench in the back again. So it's got a 72 volt system running a rear hub motor. That's a lot of power for a motor. There's 3 different power settings. I've got it cranked up to the max. And we just have to start this here. Hopefully I've got enough traction. 3, 2, 1. It's fast. So I'm reading 20.5 kilowatts and 253.9 pound-feet of torque. So if it's really, so they must be calculating 21,000 watts is my guess based on the battery and the controller amperage. So we lose a tiny bit of power just from heat and inefficiency, but that's really stinking close to 21,000 watts. And 253 pound-feet is also a lot of power. In some ways, this is the most powerful electric, we'll call it motorcycle, that I've tested. In some ways, it's not. Let me write this down, and I'll show you where it fits in on the board. My Sharpie's gone. Will Mason. I'll add the model number to this thing. I can't remember what it is, C1X Pro or something like that. So I guess just for comparison, before I go to the board, this is the Rivet Anthem, and over here we have the Rivet Outset. Same motor and drivetrain system, just different bodywork. So they are currently the leaders on the dyno board. So that is right here, 19,400 watts. So this does have 1,000 watts more on power, but it has quite a bit less torque. Remember, this is a direct drive rear hub motor. This is a mid drive, so this can be geared down to get more torque out of it. So it'll be interesting to see. I'd like to test these side by side one day on the road. My guess is the Rivet is going to outperform on the acceleration, but then maybe with the extra power, the Will Mason will catch up to it. I don't know. That'll be really interesting to find out. So yes, on wattage, it is the most powerful. On torque, it's not. And it's by a pretty good margin, so I'm going to put it in the number 2 spot right here. This is definitely one of the most interesting things I have ever ridden. Here goes nothing. So I want to focus mainly on power, speed, handling, comfort, basically everything around how is this to ride, and not so much all the gadgety stuff, because I can do that while off the bike. And I feel like I'm about to lose my phone. I have a phone holder down here to try and capture my speed, because I haven't had good luck with the GPS on this thing, which is how the speedometer works, to work yet. Okay, well, hopefully it works. hopefully the speedometer that's actually on this will pick up at some point. So battery's fully charged. So there's 3 power settings. So right now I'm cruising along quite comfortably at 30 miles an hour. But if I pin it, it accelerates so fast. So normally with things like this, once you get up to speed and then hit it, the acceleration is there, but the most fun acceleration is from like 0 onward. This thing has so much power that even if you're already up to speed a bit, you hit the throttle and it goes. Oh, nice. So the bike's speedometer has finally started working. It just took it a minute to find some satellites. And it matches my phone's GPS speedometer exactly. So when I get a second here, I'm gonna pull over and put my phone in my pocket because I'm afraid I'm gonna lose it on my mount I have down here. I'm just gonna pull over right here for a second. There's a slight delay to it because it's using GPS, but hey, it's working. Now, I don't have anything to worry about. Let's see what this thing's like to go. Full throttle. All right, so we've got the nice, quiet, just silent hub motor. And then you hit the throttle and there's no noise at all. Like, nothing. It just goes. I'm used to electric stuff, but this is even a weird feeling for me because the anthem, the rivet anthem, the outset, they have a little bit of motor noise, just enough that you can hear, and this just doesn't have anything at all. The Naxion bike is completely silent, but I feel like the difference is the acceleration is nice, but it's gradual, and this one just pulls so much harder that it's a weird feeling to go that fast and not have any noise. Very strange, but I like it. So these tires are rather chunky. It's kind of an interesting choice. They're definitely a dual sport type of tire. They're running on kind of small 12-inch wheels, but the actual diameter of the tire is much, much bigger because the tires are so fat. This thing is so fast. Scary fast. I would say the only issue I'm having right now is there's a little bit of a glare on the speedometer, so it's hard for me to get it up to speed and actually see how fast I'm going. So far the handling is nice. The weight is down really, really low. Whoa. I had a little wiggle there for a second, like a mild speed wobble. Cruising along very comfortably at 45, 50 miles an hour, like it's absolutely nothing. It is not struggling at these speeds at all. It feels so easy.
I am going really fast right now. The wind noise starts to get a bit loud, so I'm going to dub over what I originally said, or at least the gist of it. At this point, the battery has about 79 volts and 59%. It shows both on the screen. It just kind of cycles back and forth between those two. Now, that does seem like I'm draining the battery really fast, but the bike is ridiculously powerful, so that makes sense. That is kind of the downside of having this much power. You can suck the battery down really fast if you actually use all that power. So I decided to take it a little bit easier, try level 2 for a bit, which I find out is still quite fast. So now I turn it down to level 1. And level 1 power seems to limit the bike to about 40 miles an hour. So I think if you're just cruising around downtown areas, around city streets, level 1 honestly would be just fine. It still accelerates quite quickly on level 1, but you just don't get that crazy top-end power. From there, I decided to try out, all right, let's bump it back into 2, see what is kind of the rough top speed, and surprisingly, it still goes about 60 miles an hour just on the level 2 power setting. And of course, even though I was trying to conserve battery, I just couldn't help myself, so I bumped it back up to 3, and wow, the acceleration is so much more. It just pulls so much harder when you turn it up to 3. It's crazy how much of a difference that makes. And I get the bike up to about 77 miles an hour at this point before I have to start slowing down for the next intersection.
Man, the acceleration is so much stronger! Here we go! That top end power! 77. I gotta hit the brakes so I can make it to the stop sign safely. Whew. I think they said this thing goes 85 miles an hour, and I believe that's possible. I said I'd talk about comfort. It's really comfortable. I don't know what else to say. The seat is rather long. You got a ton of room. If I scoot all the way to the backrest, I feel like my arms are reaching out way too long. I kind of like to scoot forward towards the front a little bit more. It seems to stop pretty well, but you do have to give it a firm pull. So if there's one downside I am finding to this thing so far, it's going to be the battery size because of how much power it has. It's just, when you have this much power, you can drain the battery really, really quickly. Let's test out the handling a bit more. Again, these tires are kind of chunky, so not the greatest for corner carving, but maybe I'll get a better feel for the oh, there, I scraped the peg. All right, I found the limit. I know where it is. The battery percentage reading is like a real-time gauge. I just let off, so if I hammer it, it'll drop down to like 30%, but if I let go, it reads 53%. So my battery gauge actually, or my battery life I should have left, I might be better off than I first thought, because I'm seeing the sag under load. This does go fast enough. I would recommend registering it as a motorcycle wherever possible. 85 miles an hour, just way too fast. And it's not super abrupt, like it's really smooth. You would think 21,000 watts would just be kind of brutal, and it's not at all. This is probably one of the smoothest throttle setups I've ever ridden. It is so easy to use. I'm pretty sure I've left my blinker on at least once. Unfortunately, there's no indicator anywhere up here, and there's no audible noise, so you just have to pay attention to where you left that switch. I haven't even commented about the suspension yet, but so far it's really comfortable. Not too stiff, not too soft. I would say softer than a Rivet, stiffer than the Nexion, which is interesting because I find the Rivets to be amazing as far as their handling, but a little stiff maybe on comfort, but great on handling. And then I find the Nexion to be incredibly comfortable, but a little bit soft on occasion. And this one sits right in the middle of those two. Let's go through some of the weird features that the Will Mason scooter has. I'm going to start with the kickstand. There are two of them. There's one Pretty standard little side stand you would expect. Also has a center stand. Now, normally a center stand, you kind of rock the bike back up onto it, but no. They thought, let's make our center stand electric. It takes a little while, but it does get there. It gets the job done. It's surprisingly strong. You can actually sit on this thing while it's going up and down. So once it's down, then you'll see it starts to rock a little bit, and then you gotta wait a little bit longer. Guess that's the only downside to the electronic center stand, is the amount of time it takes to go from fully extended to fully retracted. There we go. That's all the way. So what did that take? 30 seconds, 45 seconds? I don't know. It took a little while. I'm gonna put that back up. That way this thing is stable while I'm showing you the rest of the stuff that's on here. So I'm gonna take a slight detour here because I kind of want to show where I think Will Mason was trying to go with this, but the execution maybe could have been done better. It's not the end of the world. I'll explain in a minute. But let's just take an Axion, for example. You've got a rear hub motor, you've got motorcycle disc brakes, nice big battery, comfortable ride, and then you have some tech stuff, right? You have a front camera, you have a rear camera. You know, these do have things like traction control and ABS braking, but you can sync with your phone. So some companies want to throw in all these extra features. They want to have Bluetooth speakers, they want to have extra lighting, and I think that's what Will Mason was going for. Like, let's put on cameras. And they did. We've got a camera back here, so you can see what's behind you, in addition to your mirrors. The front camera is mounted here, right on top of the headlight, and where the execution of the light fails a little bit is that it's like, okay, that's cool that it has a camera, but just having it stuck on here with the wire kind of running under the fairing, it just doesn't look factory or finished. It looks kind of DIY. And if we start looking really closely, we'll see that that's kind of the same with the bracket, with how this is mounted. Like, it has two holes, but it's only using one and the other one's just kind of bent over. Not necessarily bad, but not something I would expect from a factory production, which, to be clear, this is not a big factory production line. They are basically putting these bikes, I think, together one at a time for customers. So that's something we have to keep in mind. Think of this as more of a small company that's building one-off bikes for people the way people want them, which is good because that means you might be able to customize them more and potentially still get a really good deal on it. There's their logo, little plaque down on the side. We have the charge port right here. Comes with a nice big brick charger. This is the button for the kickstand, for that center stand. So you can just toggle that up or down. And when it gets to the end, it stops. Basically the way that works, I looked inside, there's two actuators mounted inside the frame right here that are just extending out. So it's actually a very simple system, which is cool. The rear swing arm, you can see, is from QS Motor. This is really nice, very nice machined piece. Back to the QS hub motor. These are pretty big, chunky tires, front and rear, almost like a dual sport tread. We got all sorts of lighting. There's reflectors here. There's a RGB LED fan. This is for the motor controller. So the motor controller is mounted inside underneath the seat. Might as well kind of pry this up and show you. So if we look inside here, you can see the motor controller. We have a little far driver dongle plugged in right here. So we might have to see if we can tweak settings or program things on this. There's the two actuators mounted on the sides. A whole bunch of wiring in there, which thankfully we don't normally have to look at. It's just buried under there. One of the little oddities of this bike is how you turn it on. I actually couldn't figure it out at first. So the ignition switch is hidden underneath the seat. Makes it hard for anybody to steal it because that's how you actually turn it on. Pop the seat down, and then this button on the left looks like it's your headlight button, but it isn't. That's actually an on-off for the throttle. So this is kind of like a park or neutral, and that's drive. It's kind of a weird way to wire things up. I had to ask how it even works. I couldn't figure it out the first time I hopped on to ride it, but that's how it's set up. So that's what I mean when I say things are a little bit DIY. There's some things that are a little quirky. Now, if you didn't see this when I was looking under the seat there is a speaker mounted right underneath you, and you've got two speakers up on the handlebars. We have like a metal bracket that's just kind of bolted onto the fork there, zip tied on. So it's just a little messy for my liking, but you can't knock it for having a lot of features. I mean, we have a phone mount. Yes, this came on the bike. Also is wired into the bike, so it has wireless charging. And if you don't have a wireless charging phone, there's a USB port built into it. So you can pop your phone up here, keep it charged up from the bike's battery. Again, you've got the camera, which you can put an SD card in there, and it acts as a dash cam, both front and rear cameras. This is the control setup for the Bluetooth speakers. So that's how you can control music. You could connect to your phone, or you can just pop in a USB stick or even an SD card loaded up with music on there if you wanted to. Of course, some of these other buttons do act like the things you'd expect them to be. So this one actually is the turn signals. Front signals are located in a couple places. You have them here on the bar ends, which I actually think is really nice. Then you've got some small indicators up here. And then around to the back, the indicators are just down low off the sides. Very discreet, very nice little LEDs. I actually like those. Hazard button here. Horn. That's a funny sounding horn. It's loud, it's like a car horn. Probably my favorite feature, because it's been wintry and cold, which is why it's taken so long for me to get this video out, is this switch right here. I think it was this switch. There's a switch here and there's a switch there. Although that one's on right now. Okay, it's gotta be this one, because this one's off. Heated grips. These are actually wrapped and heated, so that's why they look a little bit thick. You flip that switch, these warm up nice and toasty, keep your hands really warm. That is actually one of the things that I love about this. And there's so much stuff. This switch over here, that's our RGB lighting for the fan down there. Why do we need a separate switch up on the handlebars just for that? I don't know, but we do. We've also got this light switch here. So if we just want to run these standard lights, we've got our headlight. We've got some extra lights down here for extra visibility. And then we have some flashing LEDs here as well. So there's definitely not a lack of lighting on this thing. The only one problem I see with that, yes, we have tail light, tail light, tail light, tail light, but these LEDs that flash different colors, not really legal on the road to have all those different colors. And from what I can tell, there's not a separate way to turn those off. So I might have to do something about those LED strips. The rest of the lighting though, I definitely think I'm gonna leave on. It's nice to have a headlight that sees out far, and these two down low, you could really adjust. And you see this little R button right here. If we twist the throttle, obviously we get the wheel to spin here. But if we hold that R button down and twist the throttle, this thing also has reverse, because why not? Pouch right down in here. I usually keep the keys down in there. And you probably saw some of the rest of the dash here, but the speedometer is using GPS. So I find that it has a small bit of lag since it's using GPS instead of actual wheel diameter, speed, rotation, however you want to say that. But it does work. So as soon as I get out on the road and I start riding, this picks up my miles per hour and looked like it was very accurate. And then over here, we've got a basic battery gauge, which flips back forth between the voltage and the percent. You see it's down a little bit because I've been doing some riding on this. So all the features themselves are not bad. Again, I just feel like it's the execution. It's the tidiness or lack thereof of all the wiring and the mounting. I think some of this could be improved a little bit. I've had people ask, like, why is there a watch face basically glued on there? Well, that's just the clock they wanted to use. Why not? But I do personally think it could look a little bit cleaner And that is some feedback I've already given to Will Mason. And the good thing is they've been very, very responsive to feedback. They want to make their bikes better. They want the quality to be better. So as I point these things out and send them this video, and I send them photos of other little things that I find, they have been very receptive to say, oh yeah, you're right. We can improve, we could change, we could make it look a little bit nicer or function better. Oh, I missed this down here by the charge port. You have more USB ports down here. There's USB ports all over the place on this thing. So you've got these dual coilover shocks in the rear, and you know what? They are actually air adjustable. So far the handling was pretty good. I felt like maybe there was a little bit of a speed wobble, a tiny bit at one point that was controllable, but I felt it. So I'm gonna have to play with my tire pressures or maybe the pressure on the shocks a little bit just to make sure that doesn't happen. But like I said, it was very minimal, and this bike does go really, really fast, which if you're gonna go fast, you need to stop fast. I'm happy to say they are using motorcycle brakes. Not the largest that I've seen, but braking felt pretty good, especially because you are using this big direct drive rear hub motor. So you can get some regen braking in addition to the discs. Tons of holes in these things, so can't imagine these getting hot. In case you're thinking that's a Brembo, not quite. I don't have any complaints about the braking other than I did find a couple of loose nuts and bolts here that I had to tighten up. So if you get one of these, make sure to check everything. Now the battery is pretty big. They have a bunch of different models, anything from this one, which is 72 volts and does, they say, about 85 miles an hour, to some that go over 90 miles an hour. So quite a range of prices and power options. Is this street legal? How is it street legal? And the question is, or the answer is that it kind of depends, but here's my opinion on what I would do with it. It does come with a VIN number, and they do send it with an MCO. That's a manufacturer certificate of origin. So you should be able to take that to your local DMV, and depending on your state rules, they'll do an inspection. They will check the tires, the lighting, see if it has turn signals, brake signals, and verify that it's legal. So that's where, say, these LED lights might be a problem because of the different colors they flash in. Probably not legal in a lot of places. So you might want to remove those or not have them installed in the first place. Now in California, I personally have had trouble registering something that only comes with an MCO and that is electric. It's hit or miss depending on what DMV you go to. And that's where I used Dirt Legal to get a permanent plate through Montana. It's a totally different process. I have a whole video about that. If I was going to register this, which I will do if I decide to keep this, which I might, because I have a couple of ideas for it, then this is the route that I will go through. Because I can send them the VIN number, get a proper title and everything, and get it registered. That's gonna make it legal to drive in all 50 states. So my thoughts on this thing are that for the money, it is a really good deal. For the performance, if you just care about performance, this thing is really fast. If you just wanna know how can I go 80 plus miles an hour without spending a ton of money, it's crazy how much power this thing has. On the downside, I've already kind of talked about how the fit and finish leaves a little bit to be desired. It definitely could be better, but I think Will Mason is going to improve it. I am going to continue my conversations with them and see if there's some things we can't work with together a little bit. I'm gonna make some suggestions. So I have had a couple of thoughts for this specific bike and what I should do with it from here. This is hopefully just the first of possibly multiple videos I put out on the Will Mason scooters. And so this one was just to give you an overview of what I got, how it showed up to me, what the performance was like. But next, thought for a second video. I take some of the clutter and some of the things that aren't really road legal maybe here, and I basically go through and I clean this up. Everything wiring-wise, mounting brackets, anything that just looks a little odd to me, anything that looks like it could be improved, like say this metal bracket going over to this Bluetooth. I'm just gonna go through and clean that up and make this thing look as good as I can. So watch out for that video in the near future. In the meantime, I'll put a link in the description to Will Mason's website. You can check out all the different scooter models that they have, the different performance levels, the prices. If you're looking for something affordable and fast, it's definitely one you should keep your eyes on.